Hills, welcome to the Board of Education meeting of March 2nd, 2021. Please rise and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Good evening again and welcome as we slouch our way towards spring. Only 20 some odd days to go, which is great. The meeting was called to order at approximately 7:15. We discussed two executive session items, two personnel matters of individual employees. And with that said, may I have a motion, please, to adopt tonight's agenda?
So moved.
So moved.
Okay.
Second.
Okay. And I just realized, Dr. Kaltenecker, any comments from the public on matters not on the agenda to be heard?
No, there are no questions from the public.
Okay. All in favor, please? Thank you. I have a motion, please, to adopt tonight's consent agenda for personnel, special services, and business.
So moved.
Second, please.
Second.
All in favor? Aye. All right, excellent. Any particular consent items, Jen, we need to spend a minute on, or we're good to go?
I think we are good to go. We have some resignations for the purpose of retirement. We will be talking about all of our retirees a little bit later in the year.
Okay.
But it is always a bittersweet time for us when we have anyone who's going to retire. Happy for them that they're going to have time for themselves and their families, and unhappy for us that we are going to miss them. So we'll have more about that in the coming months.
Yes, we will. All right, that brings us to our special report, presentation of the administration's proposed 2021-22 budget. And who better to turn it to than the administration herself, Jen Lamieux.
Thank you. All right, Kelly.
And
Kelly will
Kelly's-
put up our slides and I am going to start. The first thing I want to do is to talk about how this budget is developed. We have had a year like no other. And during this past year, we have had to use funds that we did not anticipate using so that we could create socially distant classrooms for kindergarten through sixth graders, so that we could adopt the necessary programs and technology that we needed with the support of the Board of Education. This was a year that nobody could have been prepared for. I want the public to remember that last year at this time, we were proposing a 0% budget to budget increase. And that even with that 0%, our educators are doing the best that they can to continue to provide not only the same programs, but enhancement to programs that we currently have to create greater opportunities for the kids that we have here. I am proud to say that our administrators in developing this budget with us looked at what was necessary. And every single one of our buildings, am I right, Kelly? Every single one of our buildings had a reduction, except one, right? Except one, but that was due to the enrollment of kids in that building, which made sense. But one of our buildings even had a 6.6% budget to budget decrease. That is asking a lot of our administrators, and they know that the one thing we do not want to do is cut programs. We're remaining aligned with our mission for the district and also making sure that we are not putting this district in a position where we are not capable of supporting these current kindergarten students through to their 12th grade experience. Remember, this is something that has to be looked at in its longevity. It's not just a matter of 1 year, but what are we doing to fortify this district in a way that these kindergarten kids are going to have even more opportunities as seniors than our current seniors do, or the opportunities that are really appropriate for them at that grade level. I first want to thank our administrators. Typically, we are in the boardroom tonight and they come out en masse to support the administration's proposed budget. I feel very fortunate to work with an incredible bunch of professionals who took this mission very seriously every year, but particularly this year and last year. They have given so much of their time to keep our schools open and functioning, to keep our kids safe, beyond what anybody has ever asked of them before. And they've done this without complaint. In addition to doing that, do everything you can and do more and do it for less money was the mission. And they all were able to come to that resolution for each of their buildings. And for that, I am very grateful. Kelly Seibert was talking about something interesting in a meeting that we had recently. He was reminding us that in other districts, they start with the tax levy and then they build their budget to meet that tax levy. And that is not the way Byram Hills is doing it. We are starting with what our needs are. And at the end, we're looking at the difference between our needs and the tax levy to get that budget. I want to say that I'm appreciative of the efforts of the Finance Advisory Committee that is here tonight. Mike Sanders, Scott Levy, Mia DiPietro. They have had an active part in developing this budget with us as well. All of them serving on the Finance Advisory Committee for the past 2 years, 2 or 3 years. God, I think you've been there way longer. But they have been on this committee and they have been watching and advising us. And a few of our board members are in that capacity where they can make those financial advisements as board members, which has been an incredible contribution to us. So last year we had a budget to budget increase of 0%. And I know that our budgets have been as high as 4.6% in years before. So Kelly, let's get on with our next slide. And Mia is going to talk to us about the budget development process.
Hi, everybody. Today is March 2nd, and as Jen said, today the administrators we're going to present the administration's proposed budget. Budget hearing 2 is March 16th. March 23rd is budget hearing 3. Budget hearing 4 is April 13th. Budget adoption will be April 20th. May 4th is budget hearing 4, and May 18th is the vote at Crittenden. Just a reminder to everybody that budget hearing 3 is the last time that the public can weigh in on the budget.
Great, Mia, thank you. So budget hearings 2 and 3 are opportunities for the public to speak. And then the final budget that will be budget hearing 5 on May 4th will just be a review of that budget. So that will be a point where people don't ask questions. Well, you can ask questions, but there won't be a change to that budget. 2021-22 budget guidelines. Every year we start with board goals, and I report out to the Board of Education about their accomplishment toward those goals each year. We look at those goals. We look at our enrollment. Our enrollment right now, we are looking at potentially even adding a section to kindergarten for next year because we do see an increase in enrollment in those registered for kindergarten already. So we have to look at staffing needs. We have to look at the quality of our educational programs and facilities. How do we want to continue to grow as a district? We've grown so much. If you look at our high school programs alone, while we are a flagship program for science research, we are also one of one school, high school in the nation that we know about that's running a global scholars program. And we are constantly looking at ways for students to delve more deeply into the academics that they can become passionate about. And we'll continue to do so. That's the quality of educational programs. Of course, we have to comply with federal mandates. We have to look at revenue, which, you know, today is an up and down thing. We have to look at expenditure projections and factors, review of our debt service and investments. Kelly has been on top of that with our one bond that continues to remain out there and the refinancing of those bonds, saving us hundreds of thousands of dollars. We look at facilities and how we need to look at our cap plan for the district to determine what kind of modifications we need in buildings, whether it's roofing or some windows or whatever else we need at that time. And then district equipment. Remember, we run our own bus fleet. So we have a replacement cost associated with buses and other equipment throughout the district. We have all of our employees in staff, and we're not usually hiring out for the regular maintenance and custodial work. So we will continue to follow these budget guidelines in this budget process. Kelly? Our budget proposed for the 2021 school year was $94,534,535. Our proposed budget for 2021-22 is $95,243,544. That is a budget to budget increase of $709,000 or 0.75%. If you consider the fact that last year we had a 0% budget to budget increase and this year a 0.75% increase, while we have been able to keep all K through 6 kids in school every day and a robust program for 7th grade through 12th grade, I think that the budget we're proposing tonight is nothing short of phenomenal. We have to, as I said, think about the amount of money that we have spent in the past year for staffing and for PPE and everything else that we're not receiving money back from the state for. And we have to be careful with our budget so that we know that we have the funds to continue with this program for kids in years to come. This is not just a one-year deal, right? I'm worried about those kindergartners. They need to have it too.
And Jen,
Yeah.
I'll chime in on 2 points on the last page. The first, just to make sure that everyone that's listening is clear, this is the expense side. Ultimately, we'll present the revenue side further in the budget process. And when we get to the revenue side, it'll be not only the tax levy, but also state aid, pilots, and our reserves. So this 0.75% is not the tax levy increase necessarily. It's the budget to budget increase. And then the second point is that just when we have discussions in the Finance Advisory Committee and think about the budget every year, certainly there are two components that are quite large, one of which is pensions, which are out of our control because that's dictated by the state. The other is healthcare benefits, which just tend to, in this country, rise faster than 75 basis points a year. And so it really does make the rest of the process very, very important in terms of trying to get a budget like this done, to be incredibly careful in all the other categories, since there are certain categories that beyond our control are going to increase a fair amount.
Right. That's a good point, Scott. Not that a 0.75 is showing an increase in what we're spending. It's showing an increase in our costs, which will be coming later. Thank you. Proposed budget. We looked at the programs, the enrollment, previous budget, current needs. We looked at all of these mandates and staffing and debt service and insurance and retirement contributions, as I said. Go ahead, Kelly. All right. We continue the vision. Remember, I said that my predecessors used to say that they wanted every kindergarten child to be afforded the same opportunities as our graduating seniors. And a few years ago, I said, that's actually not what I want. I want every kindergarten child to have more opportunities afforded to the graduating seniors right now, opportunities that are applicable to them during the time in their lives that they're seniors. And in order to keep up with this world, which I'm not even sure 10 or 20 years ago when this first bullet came into being in Byram Hills, how vast the internet was at that point. And you look at all of the differences and the changes for kids and the opportunities that we as a school district need to keep up with to allow these children to go out into the world and pursue opportunities that are not only capable to do, but that they find to be fulfilling. That has to be our responsibility. School can't be like emptying out your dishwasher, right? It can't be this rote exercise that you're doing every day because this is something that you have to do. We want to see the spark, and we want kids to find what they're most passionate about so that when they leave here, they could say, I'm doing something I enjoy. I know that my colleagues here and I happen to really enjoy what we do, but I know that we're not the norm. And I want to know that our kids can go out and have that same experience. Our programs and services are a benchmark for success, and you can find those all on our website under curriculum instruction and academic departments. And one thing I'm really proud of is that we continue to look at other programs, and we have already started thinking about what other ways we can engage these students as high school learners and prepare them for beyond. Our enrollment is interesting for 2020, 2021. I think it's about 2270 now, isn't it, Kelly? We've been going up in enrollment, and we anticipate that enrollment and more next year. As I told you, we had more kindergarteners. We have the number of kindergarten students signed up right now in kindergarten enrollment that we would have had in August. And we typically gain many more students between now and August. So I do see the potential for an increased section in kindergarten next year. You'll see 493 is the actual at Coman Hill, and we're expecting 521, and that will allow for that new bump of children coming in. More kids going into the high school. You do see a little bit of a drop at Crittenden, but I'm not sure that what those numbers are going to pan out like at Wampus and Crittenden, because I think we'll see higher numbers than that as well. And the focus on staff resources. This is Gina Cunningham's ballpark, but staff increases, we are looking at the need for a second grade teacher. We have 8 sections of first grade, and those first graders are going to be moving on to second grade, and that will give us that additional section needed. And funds allocated from existing budget codes. And we'll have an annual reallocation of staff due to changes in sections by grade levels and programs, et cetera. But, it doesn't look very remarkable for the staffing, but with the retirements that we have, we are looking to fill 6 positions at this point. I'm proud of our commitment to continue to look at candidates for these positions. I know that Gina and Tim attended an all-day diversity fair on Saturday, starting to open the door to staff, looking at staff for potential filling of those positions. We also have many building subs who are certified teachers who may be viable for these positions as well. So Gina is ready to start her process, which for Gina is like tax season for an accountant. So she's about ready to embark on that. Kelly? And again, all athletic programs remain extracurricular, transportation, federal mandates and programs and services.
And then in terms of the numbers, the 3 components of a budget, your program, your capital, administrative, largest portion of any budget in a school district is a program budget. That's your teachers, your psychologist, your guidance, your health, your bus drivers, anybody that has a support students in the classroom and outside is the program. That's 72.2% this year. Any school district is usually between 70 and 75% of your total budget. The second largest is the capital. That's maintaining our buildings. That's our custodial maintenance staff, operations, utilities, our debt service, our cap plan. So that's at 16.1%. And then finally, administrative, our legal, our audits, attorneys, our supervisors, our principals, that's all in the administrative portion. And all those sections, that includes the salary, the benefits, the supplies, equipment, anything associated with those individuals. So in terms of the program, again, our largest portion, 72.2%, a 0.7% increase this year, so under 1%. This is something that you probably haven't seen in a while. There's actually a decrease in the teaching regular school. As Jen mentioned, we had a lot of retirees this year. Some of our mostly at Coman Hill experienced staff members retired. So we are going to see some savings, the difference between their current salary and the replacement in that position. So it's actually a decrease this year of 0.8%. A decrease again in students with disabilities. This is mainly due to we have some students that are aging out or are graduating this year that we're not going to be back next year. So we are going to see a decrease in students with disabilities in that category of 2.2%. An increase, a 10% increase in our computer-assisted instruction. We've purchased a lot of software related to remote instruction. So we'd like to continue that software another year. Our teachers are using it quite extensively, and we want to keep that going. Allows us to, if we have to pivot and go back to remote session, we will be able to do that very easily. And according to Dr. Taylor, they've been using it kind of nonstop, and they think they'll be using it if we're back in full session as well. So, we would like to get our software for another year, evaluate it, and then the next budget process, we could see if we want to continue that software or not.
Yeah, Kelly, I think that software we've been looking for a very long time to help us with some progress monitoring. And I think that's benefiting the teacher's instruction right now to be able to do that.
I would know one thing, if you don't mind, just jump in for a quick second. Over the last several years, we've continued to invest in the computer-related and IT components of our budget. And thank goodness we did, because
Absolutely.
we were able, again, not perfectly, no one has during this pandemic, but provide our students with online experience that was as good as it can be, and I think very well. So I think that's an area we need to continue to, if we're spending money, that's an important area given the economic climate and where we are in the economy.
Kelly, Michael just reminded me of a question. I was reading an article in the paper today about how many states are actually doing better in their tax revenue collections than they thought they would do in the COVID period. And how's New York coming along with that? And does that have any impact in aid, anything like that?
In the what? I'm sorry, he cut out a little. In what?
I'm sorry. Maybe I didn't go. The story I read, in fact, in this morning's Times, was that certain states were doing much better actually than they planned in tax collection during the COVID period. I guess maybe expenses went down. But have you heard anything about New York, whether or not, because we spoke at the last meeting about the dreaded gap elimination adjustment and all that stuff reappearing, and whether or not there's actually now a factual basis for anything like that?
Yeah, since we last spoke, the governor did his budget based on a $6 billion. He's assuming that the federal government's stimulus package would give New York State $6 billion, and that's what he did his budget on. The way it's looking now, hopefully once it gets passed, it's about $12 billion. So it's about double what he thought New York State was going to get. Again, it's not going to affect us a huge portion. We'll probably end up evening out as opposed to losing. But it's encouraging. He put us in a $15. He said we were in a $15 billion deficit going in next year. So, I mean, if we're making up that gap with $12 billion from the federal government, he still has to make up that projected deficit of $3 billion. So better than being at getting six. But so hopefully when he does when he meets with the legislatures to do the budget before April 1st, we should see an increase hopefully in state aid and that should change. But
he appears to be busy on other matters at the moment. But
yes.
So be it. Okay, thank you.
Sure. Okay, so that was technology, and then some changes in guidance and health services. Guidance just associated with the replacement of a retiree at a lower number. A small change in health services with health services provided to outside districts. We made a reduction there based on the last couple of years' expenses. And then pretty much normal increase, a small decrease in athletics. He reduced his equipment line because last year, if you remember, we increased the equipment line to pay for some items in a fitness center. So we had a reduction there in athletics. Large portion in terms of percentage increase in benefits. You're going to see that in all three of these categories. There were significant increases. Health insurance was about 4% of an increase. And your teacher retirement and your employees retirement rates increased. Employees retirement specifically, and you'll see that in the next slide with capital, that rate went up about 1.6%, which is a significant amount. Capital, again, this is kind of operation of our buildings, maintenance of our buildings, our custodial staff. A small decrease in maintenance of our buildings, just some reductions in the facilities codes. Safety and security, this was a new code last year. And we kind of separated it out from just basic O&M, basic buildings and grounds. We've reduced the line for installation of cameras. Last year we had a large budget line there, which we kind of filtered through to pay for COVID-related staffing and things of that nature. So we've reduced that a little bit this year, and that's why you see that decrease in safety and security. It's not that we're reducing security guards or anything to that nature. It's that line associated with new camera installation.
It's quite the contrary, right, Kelly? We increased security for this year.
Absolutely. Then just small increases for insurance and other items. Pupil transportation, this is specific to our vehicles, increased a little bit, 1.4%. We're replacing 2 big buses, 2 vans, and 2 minivans this year. So a little different from last year, an additional big bus this year, why it's a little more of an increase from the prior years. And we have that in the schedule, a replacement schedule of our vehicles to just make sure we're replacing them on a consistent basis to ensure the safety of our students, of course. And again, benefits, large benefit increase here in the Capitol. The majority of the staff members here are in the employees retirement system. That's the retirement system that jumped up 1.6%. So a large increase there, along with the health benefits as well that were 4%. So decrease in debt service for next year. We only have 4 years left in our payments for our final bond. So it was scheduled to decrease anyway, the way bond payments work, but we were able to refinance the remaining years of our bond, saving about $100,000 over these next 4 years, $120,000 over these next 4 years. So you're going to see that decreasing going forward for the next couple of years until it ends out in 25, 26, 24, 25. And then finally, our transfer to capital line, same number as last year. We're going to maintain that. Again, that line is used for really preventative maintenance. A lot of districts aren't able to do this, and they'll hold on projects and and they'll get to the end and they'll need a $20 million project to replace a roof, to replace a boiler. This is something we do within the budget, and we do it on a year-to-year basis. With the Finance Advisory Committee, we reviewed the projects that were talked about this year. We're going to put a generator at Coleman Hill. That's one of them. Some roof replacement at Wampus. And then finally, I'm missing. Yikes. Roof replacement at Wampus. There's one more. Completion of an air conditioning project at the middle school, and then a portion of air conditioning at the high school. That's going to be a 2-year project at the high school. We're going to get basically a wing in the middle done in a section, and then the following year in the 22-23 budget, we should be able to finish that.
And Kelly, it's probably worth noting that just on the debt service line, that's a line that if you look back over the last 3 to 5 years, we made a lot of progress in delevering, and that's a lighter load now than it's been certainly in recent history, and really has helped us, I think, get to a more as reasonable budget as possible. Absolutely,
it's definitely helped. Last year, that's how we got to a zero budget last year. Expiration of that prior bond, and in 3 years from now, we'll be in that same boat. We're going to have that bond coming off as well, so we hopefully will be in a different time, and we talked about that again. So it'll de-escalate the budget in that year as well. So it's a benefit. In terms of the last category, administrative, a reduction in the Board of Education. We just cut Ira's salary for next year, reduced it 3%. No, all kidding aside, we just reduced the board members don't get paid. We reduced the membership code for the board. Over the last 3 years, we haven't spent what we budgeted, so we made a small reduction in that number.
I will just tell the board, seriously, it built into that line item, the non-COVID era, was actually funds to attend the National School Board Association meeting, the state meeting. So if down the road, if you have an inclination to actually go to these things, there is money in the budget to pay for expenses for that. Obviously, no one's drawing anything down on this line item, but it is there to assist board members in continuing their Board of education, as it were.
Yeah. And then an increase in central administration, finance, an increase in then legal personnel, increase our legal costs, personnel, as well as BOCES increases, a small increase in curriculum. We had a decrease in our teaching regular schools. That's associated with a resignation for a director position that was filled at a lower salary. And that's guidance as well, was the same situation. That was retirement, and the position was filled at a lower salary as well. And again, as common with the rest of them, the increases in benefits, again, a 5.7% increase in benefits as well, associated with retirement, health insurance there. The major budget drivers, kind of sound like a broken record, of retirement systems. This year, the employees' retirement system had that big increase. It went from 14.6 to 16.2. The teachers' retirement was a fairly modest increase. Fortunately, this year went from 9.53 to 99.8. So, less than a 0.5% increase there, 0.25%, sorry. And then health insurance went up about 4% this year. And then our contractual costs for salary on a year-to-year basis. So mandated costs, retirement, obviously, health insurance and salary, we have some contractual control over. And then issues for concern. I mean, you could play my tape from last year and it'd be similar in terms of my discussion.
And next year and the year after.
Let's hope not. I'm being optimistic. As it's discussed in the last presentation, state aid, the governor has, made his, again, yearly idea of combining all our state aids into one category. Again, obviously we opposed that just with the lack of transparency and districts don't have the ability to reconcile their state aid on a yearly basis if you don't have the numbers listed out by category. So obviously something we fight. I don't anticipate it's going to pass with the legislatures. They've seen this before, and I think they know they have a game plan to fight against that consolidation of aid. Again, the governor is on the kick of changing the STAR exemption. Really something that doesn't affect the school district for the most part, but something for our taxpayers to be concerned about. And then mandate relief. There really hasn't been any mandate relief. In fact, there's been more reporting and more requirements going forward. And then obviously SALT, hopefully that's something that gets changed with new administration, the federal tax law changes. And those are the issues, ongoing issues that we talk about every year. But we had the conversation, like Ira was talking about in terms of the deficit. And this new package, stimulus package, New York State is set to get $12 billion in aid. So again, the governor did his budget and the state aid numbers based on $6 billion. So, he's getting roughly double what he thought he would. So there shouldn't be large reductions in terms of state aid. The worry obviously is what happens the following year when we don't have that federal package from the federal government, what goes forward. We had that conversation last year and we're back here. So hopefully things pick up and the revenues kick back up in New York State, and then we don't have to have this same conversation next year about a federal package. So the next presentation, actually not the next person, next presentation we'll be discussing some departments, but the revenue section. So really tonight we talked about, as Scott kind of alluded to, we're talking about the expenditure side, how much we're spending. On the 26th, we'll be discussing the revenue side, so how we're paying for it. We'll talk about state aid. I'll have, hopefully by then, the New York State budget will be completed, and we can go into more detail about the state aid and how it affects our district. We'll be talking about the tax levy, the proposed tax levy, and how much reserve usage or fund balance usage will be needed to balance the budget. Then we'll go into our discussion about equalization rates and changes in assessed value and how that affects our individual towns. Similar to last year, there's changes on a year-to-year basis in each town in assessed value, and that can really affect the share of each town's portion of the tax levy and that percentage. So we'll go into a lot of detail of that on the 23rd, and we'll talk about that and how it affects each town. In terms of going forward, our next budget presentation, we'll be meeting with programs for special needs, students with special needs, computer-assisted instruction, art and music, and curriculum development. So we'll hear from those department chairs or directors and about their budget and their process going forward. And then the following meeting with athletics, O&M, transportation, and we'll talk about revenue. We'll have that discussion. And then budget hearing 5 on April 13th, budget adoption on the 20th, and May 4th, we'll do that final review before the budget vote on May 18th. Let's hope it's on May 18th and in person. And
Okay.
Do we have guidance yet on the on May 18th yet about?
It may surprise you, we do not. We don't at this point.
You remember last year we were buying a mailbox.
Still got it. I have a feeling it's going to be a little both. I think we're going to have to do both. It's probably going to be requested. I'm hoping we don't have to mail it out to everybody like we did last year. It was just a very difficult process. But I think it'll be an in-person, and then you can request an absentee ballot to do it that way. So I hope it's that way, just to kind of eliminate some of the issues that are associated with just mailing, mass mailing. But once that, we'll find out, I guess. And if the public has any questions, please feel free to use my email you see on the screen. The presentation will be posted on the website tomorrow morning, and that's it.
Great work,
That's
Kelly.
great.
Thank you.
Thank you, Kelly. Any other questions on the administration's proposed budget at this point? Well, thank you. Thank you for the thorough presentation.
Welcome.
All right. That brings us to no unfinished business because we are so good. So we'll go to the new business section, the site-based team media reports.
Sure. Thank you.
Which is always a source of pride, I might add, to Byram Hills, is one of the few districts left to have site-based teams. And so be it. Tim?
Yes, and it's terrific. I want to thank all of our principals and assistant principals who are on the team, in addition to other administrators. teachers, and families. It's a great team, and we really used them a lot this year. Attached in my packet, you will see the building level reports. The site-based team at the building levels continue to meet to work on building initiatives. I want to talk this evening about the district-wide meetings. I've used this team for feedback this year, and it was critical. So I want to thank everyone for the feedback, and we really value that input from our family and our teachers or administrators having conversations together. So we just had our winter meeting last week, and I used that opportunity to reflect on the parents and the teachers' experience with their kids and where there are successes and where some of those successes we want to carry over into next year as we start our planning process for next year, in addition to what some of the challenges or pressure points where those are coming from. So in brief summary, one thing that was consistent across all of the teams was that health and safety was apparent and a priority to everyone. And it's apparent that our kids are following the protocols. Everyone felt that, and that our kids have adapted to things like wearing masks and staying 6 feet from their friends. Also, something that is emerging is that students are really gaining a lot of executive function skills. You know, they're learning to organize, they're learning to manage their time, they're learning to be able to plan. And these are all really interesting. We had some good discussions around that. And now we're starting to talk about how we continue to hang on to that and continue to teach our students these skills that are really valuable and essential to learning. We also talked about the engagement and with the learning specifically. And to some degree, there's successes, and other degrees, there's still challenges around it, giving kids opportunities to interact with one another. It happens at times, and other times we're still working toward that. And speaking with some students today, I'm conducting focus groups with students at the high school to get some input as well from them. And the students talk about the fact that while they, this is not the ideal year, they wish they had more interactions, they wish they can see their friends and hang out more. They're also getting used to this and actually value some of the time they have at home. One student particularly saying he's getting more rest. And then when he has his days where he has to learn from home, he actually accomplishes a lot because he's not coming into school and doing other activities. So there's pros and cons to both of this, and we're trying to both sides, and we're trying to really understand where there's opportunities. And just finally, that connection with teachers and connection with kids. We're finding at the elementary level that kids are really connecting with one another and connecting with their teacher. The secondary level, again, because of the cohorts, students aren't seeing friends in the other cohort as much. They don't see them in school, but they do see them sometimes in breakout rooms and class activities. So we're exploring that a little bit and looking where there might be more opportunities. So again, I just want to thank our teams for continuing to meet and giving us this feedback. It's really helpful as we go into the second half of the year.
What I was going to say is interesting how the site-based involvement of the site-based teams during the pandemic is an interesting twist, frankly, to the site-based team theory. So
Right.
Congratulate you, Tim, for keeping this going. I think it's great.
Great,
And
thanks.
Tim, I was on your last site-based meeting. You ran a fantastic meeting. He modeled the technology that the teachers are using, and it was really interactive for the participants. It was great.
I was trained in the 90s in the city and cooperative group work. So I know how to run cooperative groups, but thank you. It was exciting.
Thank you, Tim. Any questions on the site-based team reports? All right, let's go to 11.2, the resolution, New York State funding of public education. This is an action item. So may I have a motion, please, to adopt the New York State funding of public education resolution that's in your board packet?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
Okay, discussion. Jen, you want to lead this off, please? Or someone else will?
I don't know if Scott wants to lead,
Scott,
but
yeah, you seem to be the appropriate person, given that
I am happy to.
it's a resolution of New York State funding of public education, something near and dear to your heart.
Exactly, and it really goes through sort of the litany of issues attached to the budget this year that I think regionally there's a lot of support for, and so this just ticks through each one of those issues. everything from some of the things that were mentioned when Kelly was going through, some of the dynamics in Albany around the expense-based aids being combined together, which over the long run would be detrimental to us. Talks about some of the COVID-related expenses that we've had, and trying to get reimbursement for some of those expenses from the federal money. And those are just two examples, but there's a long list here. So the question is whether we want to, ultimately sign this, and then it would go to the legislative delegation as well as to the regents and the governor's office. The one thing that I noticed on here that really isn't applicable to us this year, just given where we are, is but it is generally something that the region is pushing for, is this question of allowance of a tax cap of 2% this year versus the 1.23. Not something that necessarily we need. So I would just question whether we leave that on there or not. I think from a Byram Hills perspective, we don't need to. It is important for some districts, there's no doubt, but not for us.
Yeah.
Scott,
My thought process, Scott, was that this was something not only on behalf of Byram Hills, but on behalf of public education.
That's right.
So in that,
I think that's right too. Scott, what was, if you know, what was the incentive, the motivation to do this year? I mean, a lot of this stuff we could have said last year or the year after. What is it about this year that's led to this resolution?
That's a good question. I mean, I think it's really just there are a few different dynamics at play. First off, this year there was more uncertainty than ever around just the availability of funding for education, just given the state budget deficit. I think that look, in the last few days, I mean, there have been some positive signs. I saw something today about the fact that the tax projections might be up a little bit, and then also obviously there's a very different dynamic in terms of federal aid coming than there was even a few weeks ago. So that's one. And then the second is that I think because things were so tight this year, there were a lot of different tactics in the executive budget for education compared to prior years that I think really worried people, not only about this year, but more about the year after, the year after, the year after. So things like the consolidation of expense-based aid, what they did with the way that they're showing the STAR tax reimbursement in the school runs. It's not, I mean, the STAR program is an important program, but the way they showed it this year leads one to believe that we may have reduced funding from a school's perspective in future years. So it was things like that, I think, that really increased the advocacy this year compared to prior years.
we also had a lot of schools that were really struggling this year, and because of their aid that they're supposed to be receiving and were they receiving, and potential to have that aid cut is going to cost them programs. And we had schools that had difficulty even opening because of that.
I think there's no harm in not only supporting our position, but to lend support to other districts that may be a little more challenged than we are in those areas. So this calls for adoption by the board. If it's adopted, I'll stop by the district office and sign it. And anybody else want to be heard on this resolution? If you can, unmute. If not, we have a motion made and seconded. All in favor, please. Okay, excellent. So we will sign this, and the district clerk will send copies of the resolution to all those listed on page 2. Excellent.
Thank you, Scott.
No problem.
Thank you, Scott, for that explanation. Okay. Staff reports, Madam Superintendent.
All right. Presenting on 2 screens, so bear with me as I look right. Today, first, I wanted to start my report by talking about something that I worked with today on the stakeholder group for the district. That stakeholder group, thank you to members of that group who started with us last March as we were thinking about plans for March or April. It was very early on that I decided that I needed a team of people from the community, educators from within the community, administrators from within the community, our town supervisor, few members of the town, some doctors, our parents, some PTSA members, some staff members, our union members have all been a part of this team in helping us move forward. And our reopening this year and our success with students. So I've been convening that group periodically from a year ago to now, and we just met again today. Everyone will probably by now have heard some news about schools that are moving from 6 feet of social distancing to 3 feet of social distancing. There was some question for a while there of whether that was permissible or not. Many superintendents have reached out to the New York State Department of Health and to the Westchester County Department of Health for more specific guidance. They've been telling us that while 6 foot is optimal, there has been room for flexibility in the guidance from the beginning. I know that many of my counterparts in other districts are facing a lot of pressure, particularly with elementary schools, with moving students back into school who desperately need to be in school. And so school districts around us are going to be making decisions potentially to bring students back at 3 feet, 4 feet, 5 feet, trying to follow all of the guidance with following all the guidance with barricades where you need it, with screens between kids, everybody masked, but definitely broaching that 6 foot mark that we have felt very comfortable living in since this pandemic started. The 6 foot mark is a mark that means that we don't have to typically quarantine everybody in a room when somebody is COVID positive. And that 6 foot mark is a protective mark. It's not just about worrying about whether we have to quarantine or not, but I have to say that Gina Cunningham and our assistant principals have dedicated, for a while there, it was every single Saturday, Sunday, Tuesday, and Thursday of their lives, calling parents and running quarantines to make sure that kids were safe. I worry about my administrators who are overtaxed doing that kind of work and bringing anybody in at less than 6 feet. But even more so than that, because they are willing and able, I am worried for us about changing that 6 foot mark. So knowing what is out there in the world right now and knowing what I know about COVID, this is a time that we have to start thinking about as a district, what is our decision going to be moving forward? So in the news right now, you're going to see many Westchester schools planning to phase in all K-12 students. I have no opinion about how they're phasing in students or why they're phasing in students. I'm sure that every superintendent and every board of education and community is doing what's best for their own communities. We've had assembly member advocacy to increase in-person attendance. The New York State Department of Health, as I said, claims that their present guidance allows for flexibility of at least 6 feet or a physical barrier. We were all interpreting that originally as 6 feet, whether or not you use barriers. But districts are anticipating new 3 foot guidance from the Department of Health as per Howard Zucker, and we should be getting that pretty soon. What is influencing schools to reopen? Remember, Biden called for schools reopening. Many districts nationwide haven't had any kids back in school yet. And that was the plea from the president. Certainly, if somebody's in a hybrid program, that's not what he was talking about returning all kids to school. Our kids are in school. Locally, only a few districts had full day in-person instruction for elementary students. So they're receiving a lot of pressure to get those little kids in. Parents are struggling to help their children. Children are struggling to learn remotely. Imagine a 5 or 6 year old. We saw it in March, sitting at a computer trying to have remote instruction for 2 or 3 days out of the week. It's very difficult on those communities. And also the social emotional health of students is a concern that I'm hearing from my colleagues. We have COVID fatigue. People feel the need to return to work and school. That's also driving it. And the positive changes that we've seen. We have seen a reduction in the COVID numbers. We as a district have seen a reduction in quarantines. We've been doing testing. We have started with vaccines. We have many of our staff members vaccinated. And we're starting to see some full states like Indiana moving to 3 feet. That is also driving it. So the 3 questions that I ask now are, what are the health experts saying about 6 feet versus 3 feet? Should we make any changes to the in-school K-6 plan for this school year? And I can cut to the chase. The answer is no. And 3, I'll get to my rationale. 3, are we ready to phase in students at grades 7 to 12 at less than 6 feet? The CDC, this document, CDC and Transmission of SARS-CoV in K-12 Schools, that was published February 12th of this year, gives us some information we already know, that less than 10% of the COVID-19 cases have been among children and adolescents aged 5 to 17 years. What I worry about is bullet number 2, that children can spread this to others when they don't have symptoms, right? So while the younger children may be less likely to be infected than adolescents, close contacts are going to be the spreaders. So evidence of greater transmission in middle schools and high schools compared with elementary schools is something that causes concern for me when we start thinking about 7th grade through 12th grade and phasing students back. There's different guidance on the 6 feet versus the 3 feet. The CDC says 6 feet, American Academy of Pediatrics, at least 6 feet. But if you put them 3 feet apart and avoiding close contact, you might have similar benefits. Harvard and Brown experts say 3 feet for younger learners, 6 feet for older, but you can go to 3 feet if your community levels are low enough. The National Academy of Science, Engineering, and Medicine talks about 3 feet distancing, and they claim that only the US promotes 6 feet of distancing. Yale School of Public Health just came out with their 3rd International Electronic Conference on Environmental Research and Public Health. They said children are likely to spread the virus to more vulnerable individuals in their close contacts or households. When I reduce from 6 feet to 3 feet, that's what I am concerned about. I'm concerned about controlling disease outbreaks in children is crucial to protecting our wider community. And they are recommending that 6 feet has been suggested following droplet deposition dynamics. So knowing that, but knowing that schools are moving toward 3 feet, that the question is, what do we do with this information now? This is just also the diagram from Yale School of Public Health indicating the 6 feet of distance in a classroom setup. So first, I think it's important that we talk about to find a resolution to this conundrum of the 6 feet versus the 3 feet. What is the state of our schools currently, and what have we been observing as a school district? We've been conducting our surveillance testing of about 20% of students and staff a week using Miramis PCR tests. The last 3 tests, I think 4 out of the 7 that we've had so far have not had any COVID cases, but definitely the last 3 sets of tests that we've run had not had any COVID positive cases. We are going to continue with the Miramis testing. The 10% of students and staff weekly using Binex rapid antigen tests. Remember that we applied, thank you, Kelly, to be an LSL so that we could conduct those tests ourselves. Those are anterior nasal. We are going to conduct them at the high school only to try to capture an additional 10% of students and staff weekly using those. While the Binex tests are not a desirable test for me, it wouldn't be something that I would pick. I think it has 84% sensitivity, but that's if somebody has symptoms. So to me, that's like not a great gauge. The one positive out of the Binex tests is when it flags a student or an adult as positive, they are positive. They're not having false positives. They're having false negatives. So and considering the fact that they're free, any additional measures we can do, I think are worth testing right now to see if it's valuable information to us. Vaccines, I've been surveying staff. I do not believe that I should be telling staff members that they should be getting vaccinated. I had a great conversation with a staff member the other day who said, you know what, I'm very young and I'm very, very healthy. And I don't think that I need to put anything into my body. And I need to respect that for that individual. But we are, promoting this for anybody who wants it. As a matter of fact, I would like to take a minute to thank Valerie Sloan and Shari Matisow. They are 2 parents in the district. They are working with Erica Molina, Blair Jacobs, and Beryl Vinciquera. They got appointments for 40 Byram Hills employees for vaccines. They have been doing this work. They were featured on News 12. I was so happy to see them 3 days ago. They have been finding appointments for people over age 65 in the Byram Hills school community. There are people from other communities that are asking them how they do it, and they are training people in other communities to assist people in those communities. The fact that these parents spent their personal time sitting there for hours over the course of days to get 40 of our staff members' appointments It was incredible. They were taking staff members and finding them, staff members who had appointments at the end of April, and they were moving them up 2 days, 2 days from now. I mean, they just did an incredible Herculean task for us. I'm extremely appreciative to them. And I want to thank them publicly for this. So we are working on continuing to see if staff want to be vaccinated. And the Department of Health is continuing to work with all schools in Westchester to try to promote those vaccinations. At first, they were going to some schools, and it was unclear why they were choosing some schools over another. But now they're on a trajectory and they have a plan for that. So these are all things that are moving us in a very positive direction. When you start to think about our kids and how they're managing through this phase of the pandemic. We've had 126 total positive cases. This is Gina Cunningham's chart, and total quarantine cases, we have had 40. And I have to point out, the last 3 cases that we have been through athletics and have been in the past 3 weeks. We knew that athletics was going to result in quarantine cases. We went into athletics knowing that. But what we do know is that when those athletes go into classrooms, if they are COVID positive, the rest of the children around them are not deemed to be needing to quarantine because they are not deemed to be in harm's way, right? So that has been something that has been a comfort to me in knowing our 6-foot distancing, that all of those 3 teams did not wipe out all of the classes that those children were a part of. So that has been important to us. So what do the health experts say? Some say 6 feet, some say 3 feet. What are my concerns? That some of the things that we have put into place could immediately backfire on us if we reduce the feet between children. But I do worry about something else. I worry about the fact that I may go into a classroom and see 5 kids sitting in the class and another 7 students chose to stay home that day. And I just want to make sure that we look at density in our schools, and that for question number 3, are we ready to phase in students at grades 7 to 12 at less than 6 feet? I do not know that we are right now, but I think as a district, we are committed to looking at, is there any way that we could continue to bring more students back and stay within that safe threshold for ourselves? That's a commitment that we're making as a district, as a Board of Education, as an administrator, and as a teacher in this community, that we're going to look to make sure any child who can be in gets in. I hate to think that an empty seat is existing in one of our classrooms and a kid who's sitting at home on a computer would have liked to have filled it and had in-person instruction and had a school experience. So that's where we are committing ourselves as of now. I will be having a superintendent's coffee for K-5 parents who will be happy to know that I do not recommend any changes in the plan from now until the end of the school year. I cannot take back those Wednesdays. They are integral to the teachers being able to work with the building substitutes and the other aides in making sure the instruction is happening for those K-6 kids. And I do not see any reason why we need to change the structures that are existing there, and our kids are thriving. As far as number 3, we will continue to look at what's happening in other districts over the next few months. And I know that my colleagues in other districts are going to try to put together the safest structures that they can to bring their students back. We're going to learn a lot from them. And we're going to also learn how well this works for them and see if we can get any feedback from them about our future here, whether it's for the end of this school year or next year regarding our students and the 6 feet. So we will just be committed to looking at that now. That is our 7 to 12 plan. So the steps, I had the stakeholder meeting today. In our stakeholder meeting, it was confirmed to me by our school doctors, our school physician and doctors who were sitting in on that we are moving forward with the safest plan for our children, and they recommend that plan. We're going to phase in, have a committee together, do a density study for 7th grade through 12th grade. We are going to survey the community. And when I say the community, I mean parents and children, whether it's through focus groups or through surveying kids. Staff input and planning. Of course, any planning we had would have 6 feet for the adults, because any of the literature you're reading will tell you that it is the adult transmissions that people worry about. So keeping adults 6 feet from children at the secondary level and is an important factor. And also for the factor of their own health. and the recommendation to the Board of Education on March 16th. We hope to come back to you in the next 2 weeks to tell you what we have discovered thus far and what we're continuing to work on as we look at this. So potential phase-in of students 7 to 12 beginning April 2021. We don't know if we're going to have overflow rooms. We don't know. It's all going to be based on the district study. And when I say a phase-in, I mean that, a phase-in. We are trying to stay at this point until we learn more information at our 6-foot marker to keep everyone safe. And look at this. We will get there, but at the right time. We have to make sure that I can't even believe that people were ever this close to each other in life, right? In the last year, it seems like you can't fathom people being that close to each other. These are our kids. This is who we're doing this work for. It's going to take us a lot of extra time and energy to see if there's anybody else we could be bringing in, but we will do that. And that is the end of that part of my report. Any questions on that before I move on?
Go ahead, Jen.
I have to spend very quickly, Jen, just telling you and your team thank you again. I mean, the diligence from our stakeholder group to the work you're doing. I think some of the other districts and not saying New York, but just around the country that are trying to play catch up by bringing people back because they did not have a robust plan for their children's education. I think we're doing it just right and we're making the best of the situation. So just wanted to say thank you again for that and your diligence and your team.
Thanks, Mike. I have to be honest, and I think that Tim, Gina, Kelly, and the administrators who are still on this presentation, we would all say that we could not do this work without the support of the Board of Education. I think if I had a different Board of Education, I would not have been able to do this year, and neither could my colleagues. So, you know, you asked the right question. You've all jumped up to the plate at any given moment that we've needed it. I think things like even our finance committee and looking at expenditures for this year and meeting in these constituent groups that we have to be a part of. And without that, this could not function without a strong board. I mean, and so I want to thank you back is what I'm saying. We're doing this. This is, it's our livelihood, but it's our passion. And you're doing this as volunteers. And it's incredible the amount of time. I mean, I think back to, remember in March, Scott, I think when Scott was president in March, I think we spoke every single day, right, Lara? I mean, it was a Herculean task to get to where we are right now. And that's because we have a board, an intelligent board who is a stakeholder in this. So thanks, Mike.
I don't know. We don't get paid, but Kelly said we have $3,700 something sitting there for us, or 77,000, whatever it was. Okay, Jen, go ahead.
I have a few more.
On that budget, I think the reduction for this year is because we didn't get meals at the board meetings anymore.
No,
So
you didn't get that Nick's deli sandwich. Exactly.
I missed that terrible salad. All right, go ahead.
All right. Just a little bit of an update on sports. Just a recap on our winter teams. The cheerleading group met. They didn't have competition, but they had practices 5 times a week in the lower gym. I'm really glad that the students had the opportunity to be together. Ice hockey had a quarantine, but they resumed practice after that. They had, the first game was scheduled for February 25th, but we had to cancel that game. I don't know if you remember, that was a snow event. The team is continuing to play games and their season ends on March 14th. Boys basketball has played, I think, 4 games right now, and I think they have 6 left in their regular season. Their season ends on March 14th, and JV came off of quarantine on February 28th, and I think they have 3 or 4 games left to play in the regular season. They end on March 9th. Girls basketball came out of quarantine on February 28th. In case you want to know what Gina Cunningham and the high school assistant principals have been doing with their time. But they are continuing to play, ending on March 14th, JV ending on March 9th. Ski team finished the regular season with a first round postseason qualifier, and 7 skiers raced. Their season's over. Winter track had 1 virtual scrimmage this season, and they're going to have their second and last meet. Oh, they had their second and last meet at Eastchester versus Pelham. So congratulations.
It's something I read where there was a track meet held, I think, in the garage of the Palisade Center or something. They blocked it off so the kids could run, and also the basketball teams, I believe, may qualify for some additional postseason games. They were talking about that recently, dividing the jurisdiction up.
Start on Monday, March 8th. That's football, volleyball, girls swim, and cheer. We are waiting to hear about the modified season, as we usually are. And then our spring season, scheduled to begin on April 19th. That's baseball, softball, track and field, boys tennis, boys lacrosse, girls lacrosse, boys golf, and girls golf, which we actually may have a merger for. But golf is something that I could acquiesce to a merger for. I mean, they're not together. They're outside, and we would have our kids in carts with, walking. So it doesn't matter. The other thing is regarding sports, we have outside user groups. Rob Castagna has reached out to them. The outside user groups, if we have the space and capability, and if they can meet our guidelines, they are going to be told that they have to be looking at the return to athletics form and adapting that for their particular group that is going to be coming to use our outdoor facilities. And if we can host them, we will host them. But we really have squeezed 4 seasons into 2 seasons, and it's difficult for us. But we intend to try to help them out with some field space in any way that we can. Along those lines, we are planning to permit the town of North Castle to have their recreation program. It's mostly going to take place outside of our schools this summer, but they will be able to use some of our indoor space. They are looking at our 92-page return to school plan to pull out portions of that plan that are applicable. We need to know that outside user groups and that this camp group have systems in place for not only safety, but for contact tracing, et cetera. So we're willing to partner with them and help them with that. We have a little experience in that department, right, Gina? We'll help them. And my last thing is a student highlight. So we had National Merit Scholarship finalists, 5 Byram Hills High School students selected as finalists for 2021 competition. And the students are Jordan Bernard, Luke Briotti, Talia Dinstein, Jared Alon. I'm seeing Jared's name everywhere. And Catherine Petulik. So congratulations to them. And the last is, I love this, Lisa Pellegrino sent us a message to let us know that they had a successful Mu Alpha Theta sponsored virtual puzzle day on Saturday. They had over 130 students in attendance virtually from 9 to 12 o'clock. They worked in breakout rooms the whole time, and the winning team solved 7 of the 8 puzzles. I think that's awesome. Thank you, Lisa, for doing that for us. And congrats to our kids.
What kind of puzzles, Jen? Are those like math puzzles or jigsaw
Math
puzzles?
puzzles. Yeah.
Math puzzles, yeah.
I hope I'm not mispronouncing her name, but Jennifer Moy.
Oh, yeah.
Congratulations to her on being named the Con Ed Athlete of the Week. That's always a wonderful.
Yeah. I mentioned that before, Ira. Yep. I know. It's great.
No, I just was thinking about that. We get a few of those every year, and it's really special. This is a special young lady. I've seen her academic and athletic achievements. It's terrific.
Oh, yeah. She's amazing.
Yeah. Okay.
And that's it for me.
Well, thank you very much. Dr. Coltonecker.
Sure, I have a few things. And by the way, that puzzle day, Lisa Pellegrino has been running for several years. They've been doing it in person, and now it went virtual. So I'm very happy that they're continuing that. Thank you, Lisa. I am going to just share something real quick. I have a few things. Let me share this document. It is our annual special recognition document that we publish around this time every year. On the cover is our very own superintendent with Chris walking the class 2020 down the field on June 4th last year for graduation. This document called Special Recognition can be found on our district website. Just Google that into our search bar and this will come up for you. And it shows all of the highlights in the district that we're very proud of that make Byram Hills what it is. And we're proud of this document. It includes our college admissions information. It includes our fine arts and our athletics accomplishments. So I encourage our parents to take a look at this online, and we'll be sharing it during the budget season as well. One thing on here are 2 pages, more than 2 pages of student recognition around publications, students that get published through our science research program and other courses. And it's just amazing at all of the publications that our students end up with. So I ask our families to check out that document. We're very proud of it.
Tim, it's my favorite document.
I know, it's fun, right? It's terrific. So
It's really great.
thanks for everybody who contributes to that. I do want to give an update on state testing. So
That's my least favorite topic.
It's all of our least favorites, but it's one that's causing a lot of buzz right now. And there was just an update at 6:30 this evening, so I'll give an update on Regents exams. You will recall that the New York State Education Department submitted waivers to the United States Department of Education to not administer state tests this year. They did some outreach in early February and sent that just a few weeks ago. And following that submission of the waivers, the U.S. Department of Education put out a memo. And in their memo, they said that states will not be granted blanket waivers. So that was some news that created buzz 2 weeks ago. However, in reading the memo, they did provide some opportunities for flexibility. So they are not counting the state test toward accountability for this year, so there will not be an accountability requirement. They're waiving the 95% participation requirement for districts. They're also allowing flexibility in how states determine to administer state tests. They give suggestions like you can shorten the test, or you can extend the window of the test through the summer or even to next fall. And they are saying you could give just remote options. So those are all some things that were in that memo from the U.S. Department of Education. New York State came out the next day saying that they are examining all possible options, and they will be making a proposal to the Board of Regents on some regulatory changes, some things the state can control, in 2 weeks. On March 15th and 16th is the next Board of Regents meeting. So we're waiting for that information. However, I did get a memo on Regents exams just this evening, which does say that it does indicate that New York is still talking to the Department of Education, the U.S. Department of Education, to grant those waivers. So they're still pushing to get those waivers to exempt us from the state test this year. However, what they can control, they will, and they are canceling some Regents exams right now. Their intent is to cancel all of them. However, if they're not granted the waiver, they have to give some assessments. And those assessments that must be given if the waiver is not granted would be Algebra 1, English Language Arts, and then a science assessment. And they are going to offer the living environment, which is biology, and earth science. All other Regents exams are going to be canceled. Those 4 Regents exams I just mentioned could be canceled if we are granted the waiver from the United States Department of Education. So that just came out actually recently. They're also canceling the August Regents exams.
Tim,
However, all that is just proposal that will be in front of the Board of Regents on March 15th and 16th.
Tim, what's the concern about giving the administering the state tests? Are we concerned that the kids haven't covered the material, or?
Yeah, there's a few things. So in the memo, New York has said all along that if they do not feel they could administer the test safely, that they would ask for a waiver. So they don't believe, because some students are at home, some are hybrid model, some are fully remote. If you think about the way we score tests, we would have to administer those tests, bring kids in. Teachers would have to handle all those materials. Then teachers have to go into a room and grade those materials. And to handle all those materials, be in a closed room where you need to have discussions about the items, the state doesn't feel they could administer these tests in a way that is safe for kids, because we grade those assessments by hand. And that's one piece. And then how do we bring kids in for all those assessments? They don't have a platform. State Ed doesn't have a platform to administer these tests digitally. So
it's more of a safety. It's more about safety than academics.
Absolutely. That was always their intention, that if they didn't feel they could administer the test safely, they would not do so. Right. So that's the latest update. We're continuing to monitor this, and we should have word in a couple of weeks to see what State Ed is proposing. And one more update is on the other testing, which is advanced placement exams. The College Board put out a few weeks ago a schedule of the AP exams, and our high school administration have been working tirelessly to figure this out. I want to thank Chris Walsh and Colleen O'Connor, who've been working around the clock to figure this out. They've been working with the teachers of the advanced placement courses and with the academic chairs. It's a complicated schedule. The College Board has assigned three different administration windows. Starting as early as May 3rd and going as late as June 11th. So in analyzing all of the pros and cons to these administration windows, we will be administering during the second administration window. We didn't want to offer it too early, so we felt that could disadvantage our students. We didn't want to offer it too late because we lose our seniors who are in internship. So the second administration seems to be the one that is best suited. Some of these are going to be digital and some will be paper. And that was part of the consideration as well. We can't bring all of the kids in who take AP courses. There's 21 advanced placement exams to administer these tests with a lot of students. So we have to think about the space to bring those kids in to administer the paper ones and the proctors that we have available. So it's a big challenge, and we think we came up with a schedule that's really going to work, and that's going to be going out to families soon. And we'll continue to work hard to give flexibility to any individual needs that exist.
Tim, was it a blanket decision that had to be made in terms of all APs given either the second date or third date, or could you mix and match? Or
you can mix and match. We will be doing some mixing and matching. The first administration was heavily on paper administration, and that's why this isn't a desirable one as well, because we don't have the space to do that. We actually looked at that. We don't have the space and the personnel to actually implement that first administration blanket wide. So the second one seems to be a good balance. That has a balance between paper and digital, where the June ones are mostly digital. So we wanted to look at the exams and when they're being offered and which ones are being offered digitally and which ones are on paper in person. And so it's really a balance of that between all.
Because I guess the question that I would have just is, given that, to no fault of anyone, the amount of instruction time this year just is less than it was in most normal years. But it seems like, at least as of now, maybe still subject to change, but I doubt it, the AP looks like it's moving forward with the traditional type of test, covering like the full year of material. Like, is there logistically enough time to prepare students by that middle date? Like, is it logistically possible?
Yeah, the middle date is pushing it back later than it normally would have been, because we usually started in early May. So this is going to mid-May. May 18th is the beginning of our window, going through May 28th, and that's later than normal. Usually we're finished earlier.
Got it.
And then the downside by going into June is that our seniors are all away on internships starting May 17th. And so that really is cutting into that piece. And most of those exams are digital as well. And we think some of the exams, the College Board is actually recommending some exams to be taken on paper if possible. And that would include the calculus exams and the physics exams, which tend to be harder to take digitally.
Yeah, the calculus was the problem they had last year, right?
Yeah, with uploading pictures, that was a big fiasco.
Got it.
So I do want to thank Colleen O'Connor. She is going to run sessions with kids who are doing it digitally before the exam, as she did last year, and she's putting a lot of time into it.
Thanks for the thoughtfulness. I know this is going to be a challenge for the teachers and for the students this year.
Yeah.
Not easy.
Yeah, so it's been a good team talking about it at the high school, and we're making adjustments accordingly. Thanks to everybody.
Well, thank you.
I have.
Thank you. Great. Thank you, Tim. Anything, Kelly? Well said. Okay, President's report. Really, Michael Sanders, our esteemed member, we really stole my thunder. So I would just echo what Michael said to Jen about the administration's performance during really the last year or so. It has been beyond what we could have reasonably expected. I know the board sets very high bars of performance for its administrators, but you guys have cleared it with room to spare. So we thank you again. Any committee or board member reports from the board at this point? I'll say that we had a town liaison meeting last Friday. And I'm happy to report the town remains solvent and in business. So that's a good sign. And I think actually we should just take a moment to really thank Mike Shaliro for his leadership and for the town board. I think Michael and the board really have been real partners with us over the last few years, which is something that took a while to get into place, if those of you who go back a while. So to Michael and the town board, we thank you for your cooperation and your working with us on areas of mutual interest. It's never taken for granted, and it really is appreciated. Any other committee board member reports? Anything?
The only thing, I'd be really quick, Jen and I have been sitting through some of the legislative meetings for legislators in our region, and I have a couple more coming up, and good dialogue about all the issues that face schools, both on the budget side, public health side, and I think generally we have very supportive delegation when it comes to education. So.
Yeah. Well, okay.
Thank you for doing that work, Scott.
Yeah, Scott, that really is, we're always thankful of your involvement in that. Any topics, future agendas, any RFIs to the board at this point? Communications to the board, other than what you've already seen. May I have a motion, please, to approve the Board of Education minutes of January 19, 2021?
So moved.
Second.
Second.
Any
Whatever.
modifications, amendments, changes anybody want to propose? Seeing none, all in favor, please? Aye. Okay. And with that said, may I have a motion, please, to adjourn?
So moved.
Is there a second? All in favor? Thank you, Byram Hills. Stay safe, and we'll see you soon. Good night, everyone.
Thank you,
Thank you.
everyone.
Good night.